If this is a country that is made by the people, for the people, to serve the people, it is important that we turn out and vote, but we don't. So the definition of voter turnout is the proportion of the voting age population that votes, sometimes defined as the number of people who are eligible to vote that actually do vote. So people who are over the age of 18, not felons, that are citizens and are registered through their state. Average turnout in a presidential election hovers around 50%. In a midterm election, where we vote for Congress members in between voting for the presidential election or voting for the president, it's about 40%. There is a difference between how often we vote for president versus...
I'm actually a Star Wars fan.
It's okay. I was just angry. I thought that y'all were playing around.
No, I leaned against it.
Okay, okay, you can't do that. This is Smithville High School. You see these walls?
Can we blame my sister?
Who's your sister?
Liz.
Oh, who's your sister? You can tell Liz that y'all made me angry, but I'm okay now. All right, y'all seem sincerely sorry, so okay. I just wanted to scare you.
We're sorry. It's not gonna happen again.
What do you know? You like the Beatles.
Oh! That hurt my heart.
The Beatles are cool. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
If you don't like Beatles, voice
Okay, I can take that. Now, go tell them how horrible I am.
Okay.
All right. Good God! Ugh. I was recording notes. Okay. Okay, in a midterm election, about 40% of the people show up. Sorry, I had to pause for a second. Somebody in road trucks class just threw my books on my face by flinging their body into the wall. It's confusing. I'll tell you about it later. There is a difference in how often people vote in a midterm election compared to the presidential election because the midterm election doesn't get as much publicity and awareness as a presidential election. There's many more members of Congress than there is just one president, so the media tends to focus on one guy versus 535. Also, the president represents the entire country, whereas Congress only represents a state or a district. Primary elections, where you choose the candidate to run for your party, they have even less turnout, and generally people don't show up to a primary election unless they're educated. Referendum initiative, when the people vote on whether or not to pass a piece of legislation, that has low turnout as well. Why the apathy? Apathy means laziness. Why do we seem so lazy? It just is more difficult to vote in the United States, and it takes more effort to vote in the United States than it does other Western democracies. In the United States, it's actually more time-consuming and complicated to vote. We vote on one day. We have single-day Tuesday voting. I'll talk about early voting in the next slide. But people are very busy on Tuesdays. It's the middle of the work week. People have things to do, errands to run, kids to pick up. So to take time out of a busy day to vote doesn't always happen. Voting fatigue. We offer so many offices at so many different levels to vote for. So we vote for too many offices on too many dates, and people just get tired of doing it. They're like, there's another election coming up. Lack of efficacy. Efficacy, remember, is, hold on, let me get this. Efficacy is when people feel like if they get involved in politics, they can really change the way the country is run. And we really don't believe that if we vote, it's going to make any difference. So we definitely have a lack of political efficacy. And the reason we have a lack of efficacy, it's directly tied to our lack of trust in the government. And I talked about trust in the government and how it diminishes or diminished after the Vietnam and Watergate. So if you look here at this graph, it shows you how much of the time do you feel you could trust the government, and it correlates it to how much of the time you feel like you have an impact on congressional decisions or decisions of our leaders in Washington. We very rarely always feel that we can trust the government, and that corresponds to our lack of efficacy. Only some of the time we believe that we can trust our government officials, and only some of the time we feel like we can have efficacy. So there's a direct correlation between these two phenomena, the lack of efficacy and the trust in government. If we don't really feel like the parties are very different, like if we think that the Democrats and Republicans are too similar in their views, then we won't vote because we'll think, oh, well, voting for one is like voting for the same guy. You know, voting for a Democrat's no different than voting for a Republican, so we won't do it. And ironically, if we don't really consider ourselves strong Republicans or strong Democrats, we will also be less likely to vote. There hasn't been as many efforts on the voter mobilization front. I'm recording quiet. All right. Sorry again for the interruption. Another thing that will cause voter apathy is the fact that there hasn't been as many voter mobilization efforts made by the parties or by candidates. They're not doing as much to actively get people to the polls or to the voting booth. And negative campaigning. When there's a lot of mudslinging, people do not want to vote. It kind of turns them off to the whole process.